Hello and welcome to the FCA International Webinar Series. It's so good to have you join us today, whether you join us from anywhere around the world, whether it's morning or evening. This topic for our webinar today is English language learning at FCA. I'm your host, Josiah Marr. I'm the Director of International Students at FCA. It's a great joy for me to serve families, partners, and to encourage students on their journey at FCA. I've already connected with those who are in the conversation today about where you're joining from. Thanks so much for joining, and I'm excited to share these things with you. For those who are joining me watching the recording later, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. The agenda for today's webinar, we're going to discuss our teachers at FCA. They are so key to the teaching and learning, and especially the English language learning that happens at FCA. We're going to talk about testing and how we test international students to be able to understand their current abilities and support their learning. We're going to learn about the ESL classes that we offer in order to create safe spaces and encouraging environments for our students. We're going to learn about the support system that we have with policy and how we partner with families and agency partners and students in order to support their learning in the best way possible. Then at the end, we'll have a question and answer period, and I'm looking forward to hearing any questions you might have, whether they're questions about this presentation specifically, or they're questions that you're just wondering about FCA. For those who are watching this recording later, you can always send me an email or send FCA an email to ask questions as well. We always love to hear from you. Let's jump in. Fredericton Christian Academy is located in the beautiful city of Fredericton, New Brunswick. This is in New Brunswick, Canada, on the Atlantic coast of Canada. And Fredericton is the capital city. It's the cultural, economic capital of our province. It's a beautiful place to live. There are about 60,000 people that live in Fredericton. So it's a nice, smaller size city. It's very safe, very welcoming environment. It's actually really common, whether you're walking outside or whether you're enjoying a music festival or a venue in Fredericton, for people to say hi, people to ask you, hey, where are you from? Or what's your name? To be able to connect is a very Atlantic Canadian thing. And it's really neat to live in Fredericton and have this environment to be in. It's very welcoming for international students as well, because it's a quite international city. We have a university, actually 2 universities, multiple colleges, numerous international students, professors from different countries, and families that are coming to Canada kind of from everywhere in the world, landing in Fredericton because of its international elements. The vision and philosophy of FCA. Our vision is to exceed and enrich the educational experience of every student. And we do this by challenging them, by guiding and walking with them on their journey of learning. And we challenge them to grow in knowledge, skill, character, leadership, and courage. All of these different ways that they could grow. Our teachers are so central to that. And we want them to grow in these ways through challenge to dynamically impact their world. Now that you've heard a little bit about our school overall, let's jump in to learn about our teachers. This is a photo of many of our teachers, although there's others that aren't even pictured in this photo. We have an awesome team of professionals at FCA. All of our teachers are qualified, certified teachers. They are experts in what they do. What they do really well is to care for your students. They are really good at welcoming international students, at learning about their cultures and learning about their traditions and family, that they are used to having international students at FCA. We've had international students at our school for a few decades. So it's a great joy when we welcome new ones to the school. It's a great joy when we see them learn and grow and go on to the next grade or graduate from our school and go into university. And these teachers, they are just wonderful, wonderful people. And that makes so much of the difference, right? They're great role models for our students, and they offer warm and welcoming environments for the international students. We're going to learn about testing, how we test international students to understand their level so we can support them. We use the Oxford Placement Test in order to test new international students. And it should be noted that if students are considering applying, and Livia, this really applies to you as one of our partners, if families are considering applying, there is no proficiency requirement for admissions at FCA. We want the school to be accessible to everyone. We want people to be able to apply, even if their level is very basic of being able to speak and read and write in English. That's no problem. We have classes to support their learning, which I'll discuss later. We use what's called the Common European Framework of Reference to measure the languages, or the level of English language proficiency of our students. That Oxford Placement Test will give us results that will say a student is at a certain alphanumeric code. So A1, for example, is the most basic, then A2, going all the way up to C2. And C2 would be what somebody is in their first language after they're kind of reached adulthood in their first language would be able to be at. Okay. So for me, that would be speaking English. For some of our students that come to us, they're C2 speakers, of course, in languages like Mandarin, Cantonese, Portuguese, Japanese, Korean, etc. So it's a challenge for students to learn a second language, but it's the perfect time for them to learn. Their brains are very malleable. They're able to absorb so much information. And we find that they make strong progress if they're getting involved and if they're putting themselves out there. We also retest our students at regular increments. We'll often retest them every new semester if we've noticed they're making progress, or if we want to encourage them and show them, hey, you're improving. Good work. Keep up the good work. We use that for positive reinforcement as well. A little bit about our ESL classes at FCA. I'm really excited about our new resources. We have National Geographic Learning textbooks. We purchased the full run of the Impact series, and this series is a very diverse and very thoughtful text series to help English language learners to grow in their English level. Our beginner ESL classes start with the more basic textbooks from Foundations to Textbook 1, and our advanced classes get into the higher level textbooks as they progress throughout the course. And one of the things that I love the most about these books and about these programs is that they're very diverse, that students are going to see diverse cultural perspectives, diverse festivals, or international images all throughout these textbooks. You may have heard of National Geographic before, right? It's a magazine, originally started as a magazine that has been around for decades and decades. Now, of course, they're involved in other things from TV and movies to learning as well. And it's really cool when students open up these books. If they're from South America, they're seeing South American festivals, things happening in Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, and they're learning about these things at a level of English that works for them. So the activities might be focused on learning grammar, for example, or learning about how to talk about our family. But we're seeing pictures of images from all around the world, which is really helpful that this text is culturally responsive to our students, which means they see their culture represented in what's happening in the classroom. That helps them to feel more welcome and to feel more comfortable to learn. The first class specifically that I'd like to talk about is ESL Foundations. And based on ESL testing results, our students are assigned to different ESL classes. This ESL Foundations class, it provides extra support for beginning English speakers. It's a safe place to develop English skills for students just to try and learn. Learning English or learning any language is challenging. It's no secret, right? It takes time to learn, and it takes a lot of bravery because we have to try, or we have to say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that word. Or we have to say, help please, and get assistance with this learning. We find that our students do really well in this ESL Foundations class because it's a small group instruction environment. Currently, our ESL Foundations class has 5 students, and it just really helps our teacher to be able to connect with these individual students. Our teacher's name is Mrs. Gabby Bishop. She does a great job of creating a safe environment for the students where they can learn and grow together. This is also, ESL Foundations is offered at a variety of ages, and sometimes the classes do span a few different age groups as well. The next classes that I'd like to talk to you about are our high school classes. We have leveled ESL in the high school. So we have a high school beginner class and a high school advanced class. The beginner class, as you can imagine from the CEFR scale, it's leveled for levels A1 and A2. So those that have a basic level of English, they're able to work together in this class, be instructed by our expert teacher, and to get instruction that is specific to the level they're at today. This really helps them to develop things like, as listed here, basic conversation skills, understanding personal introductions, writing simple sentences, developing their vocabulary, their speaking skills, and providing basic information about things they're interested in. They cover so many different things. Like I mentioned, those impact textbooks have topics about environmentalism or topics about festivals around the world, topics about different sports. Many, many different things are covered, all at that basic English level, which really helps our students to learn. From there, we have the advanced class, where students from B1 and B2 are able to learn and grow together. They are building on the foundation of the beginner class, or if students are coming brand new to FCA and they're in B1 and B2, of course, they can jump right into advanced class. And this helps them to develop the communication skills in a variety of scenarios, producing simple pieces of writing, refining their speaking skills, expanding their vocabulary, and retaining main ideas from complex texts. So they're taking the skills they've learned and they're continuing to apply them in different ways. They're not just learning about things like, hi, my name is Josiah, I'm from FCA, but they're understanding and explaining more about their history and their background. They're reading different texts and able to pick out the important parts and doing comprehension as well to be able to prepare them for their full mainstream classes and to be able to prepare them for university and beyond in using English. Let's talk a little bit about support for international students and English language learners at FCA. First support that we offer is for new international students with beginner English proficiency who come between grades junior kindergarten and grade 10. They can audit their first semester at FCA. Now, this depends on their English proficiency. So if a student has very advanced English skills, there's no need for them to audit because they're able to keep up with the class. And I should mention here that the word audit for our purposes means students participate fully in class and their grades just don't count on the report card for that period of time. Now, this isn't a punishment for students. This isn't us treating them without respect. This is actually us helping them to have less pressure and helping them have more success learning English because they're not worried about, oh no, like I don't really understand English. I'm not able to, I'm not going to maybe get as high a grade as I want or my parents want in my math test. Or this English essay is very hard. I'm going to have maybe a little bit of trouble writing it. And I'm not going to get as high grade as I want. I might end up getting a 65% in my first semester because it's hard. And as I learn, I'll be able to do even better. But it's discouraging sometimes for students to have report card grades that they feel like aren't quite meeting their own standards. All that to say, this helps our students to be able to learn with a little bit less pressure and helps them to learn in a kind of more welcoming, less pressured environment to start, which will then help them to grow their English skills. We find that students have a lot of success with this because they're able to just focus on learning English, focus on trying, focusing on doing the homework and understanding and building a relationship with the teacher. And then in their second semester, they're able to hit the ground running. They've acquired more English skills. They're able to understand more and be even more successful. Another support that we have for our English language learners is our technology assistance of tablets. For those that are beginner English language learners, we have some tablets for them to be able to use, to be able to translate. They use translation apps to translate the text, voice, and photos. They can interact with their peers and with their teachers with this. They can also interact with the things that are going on in class. So for example, maybe they received a printed handout or they're working on a computer. They can translate using that tablet. They can take photos of the text that will translate for them. They can chat with friends and ask them about their weekend and other things like that before school or during lunchtime to make connections. This helps bridge the gap for the English language learners that are at a more basic level, helps them to learn new vocabulary as well, because they're seeing so many new words and seeing the direct translation to their first language. A really neat opportunity for students, and helps them to unlock some of their potential and helps them to be successful. Next, I wanted to discuss the general English language learning journey at FCA. And really at any stage for any of us learning a language, it can be difficult, as I mentioned. It can take time. And no matter what, even if you are the top student, if you're working really hard and you're preparing and practicing at home, no matter what, it still takes time to learn English. And that's okay. That's expected. And we have space for that at FCA to go, this is where students at. We're going to support them and encourage them. And we know it will take them some time, but we're excited to be with them on the journey. So here are my tips for students and families that are wanting to learn more English. The first one is to read English books. The more you can read, the more you can retain. All right. So reading is still one of the top ways that humans remember or absorb information. So I understand that everyone is at different English levels in the world, really, and our students that come to us. So it's not the expectation necessarily that students will come and be able to read very complex or difficult English books. But if a student's at a basic level, it's perfectly fine for them to be reading basic English books, things that are maybe intended for a little bit younger age group, things that have only a few words and some pictures on the page. That's totally fine. It's actually the way all of us learn how to read at basic levels. Involves a lot of images and pictures. That's why books are so great. Feel free to buy books, for those families that are listening or partners that are listening. Feel free to buy books from bookstores. You can also borrow books from a library. If you're in Canada or other countries, many countries have libraries to be able to just borrow a book for a short period of time and to experience it. From there, practicing writing is really valuable. I always encourage students, because writing is one of the hardest things about learning English. Writing often develops the slowest, actually. So I encourage students to have a journal or a little notebook. For example, I have a notebook here, if you can see my screen, and basically, we'll just encourage students to have some type of writing prompt or thing that they want to write about every day. Maybe they just write about the best food they had today. That's great. Just a chance to write down some English words. Maybe they do what's called a journal and they just write down some thoughts from the day, some things that went well, or an adventure that they had, a friend that they made. Lots of different things to write about. You can also just go completely creative with this writing activity, and they can write about stories, like made up, make-believe, fun or funny stories. I know that's something I used to love to do as a kid and still kind of do today. From there, I always encourage students to practice their speaking. And we try and create safe environments at FCA where it's totally okay for students to make mistakes, because mistakes are really important in our learning journey. Now, students can practice speaking by just trying to talk about their day. They can practice speaking by, if there's no one to talk to in English, that's fine. They can practice speaking by, they could call a friend potentially on the phone or on a video call and practice. They can also just record themselves on their phone or on their tablet. So set up a phone, maybe leaning against a desk or a book or something, and then practice your speaking. Tell the phone, tell the video about what you did that day, or about what you're learning in a class. Then you're able to record yourself and watch the video back. So you go, oh, okay, I didn't quite say that word correctly. And then you look up the word, how do I say that word? or you go, I didn't like how I said that particular word. I'm actually going to change how I say it and keep practicing that. Just a neat opportunity for students to try and practice. From there, there's two more important elements. One is to watch, to absorb English through watching, watching TV or movies. There are many different streaming services out there, no matter which country you live in. Most countries have them. And you can watch TV and movies in English with English subtitles on. So why do we do all those things together? Well, if you can imagine, you're watching, so you're understanding the situation from the images you're seeing. Then you're hearing people speak in English. So you're hearing some of these words connected with the images you're seeing. And then you have the subtitles on in English so that you're able to see the spelling or see what they're actually saying and read it. Like I mentioned, reading is really powerful for the brain in the learning process. So if students can hear, see, and read all at the same time, they're able to have even more accelerated English learning. And a couple more things I'd like to mention. One is listening. I know back in the day, if we were doing a listening activity, sometimes people would say, listen to a CD or listen to the radio. Nowadays it's listen to music. Maybe it's on a streaming service. Maybe it's on YouTube or something. Listening to podcasts. There are so many podcast topics about so many different things. It can be a podcast specifically for kids, podcast about a TV show, podcast about a certain group or sports team or things like that. And then audiobooks as well, just listening to stories. There are many, many audiobooks on different services that are offered. I know things like Spotify and Audible have different audiobook options to be able to listen to audiobooks. The final one that I'll mention that's really helpful for the English language learning journey is getting involved in something, to get involved in a sport or club with first language English speakers. So the student is then playing basketball and the teammates are students that are Canadian or English speakers that can help them to learn. They're able to problem solve in English. And that really accelerates the learning because they're able to practice and try their English out in specific contexts. That's just a little bit about my tips for the English language learning journey and how students can grow their skills. Next, I wanted to share with you a neat case study from FCA. I call it Arthur's Awesome Advancement. The student pictured here, his name is Arthur. He's from Brazil, and he joined our school last year at the beginning of the school year. And Arthur had great progress made, even in his 1 year at the school. He actually moved from A1 level, so the most basic English level, all the way to B1. Okay, he jumped from level 1 basically to 2 to 3 out of 6, all in 1 year. But how did he do it? Pretty cool, but Arthur was really engaged in his English learning. He worked hard in his ESL classes. He showed up to class on time. He had his notebooks. He was ready. He asked questions. He participated in activities. He listened really well. Then he was supported by staff. He had awesome ESL teachers and policy and technology that all were used to help his learning. The policies like the new international student grading policy for auditing, or being able to use technology like the tablet to translate, to learn new words, to make friends, all those things. He then spoke English as much as possible. And Arthur wasn't afraid because he thought, oh, maybe I won't say that correctly. He was just brave. He was willing to try and practice, talk about basketball that he has on the weekend or a soccer game coming up, or ask people how they're doing, and ask about their family. He learned so many different words through speaking English often. Then he got involved. As I mentioned, being involved in an activity or a sport can really help accelerate the English learning process. And we saw that with Arthur. Arthur got involved in soccer and basketball at FCA. He played many, many sports games, tons of sports practices, and he was exposed to English teaching from his coaches in English and English interaction from his peers on the soccer and basketball teams. Arthur bravely made friends. As I mentioned, he talked and spoke as much as possible, and he would kind of talk to everybody. Whether the student was younger than him or older than him, Arthur was really friends with a lot of different people. And then he did lots of activities with his homestay. When he got home from school, even though he was putting himself out there, he was still willing to connect with his homestay to practice his English and to grow in those ways. So well done, Arthur. We're really proud of you and your advancement. And this is just one example of the success stories that we have at FCA with students that are working hard to develop their English level. I wanted to discuss about our application process for anyone who's interested, who might be joining now or watching later. In order to apply to FCA, here's kind of a little bit of step-by-step and how we do it. First, you're going to email that email there on the screen. Mrs. Sarah Jane Bishop is our Director of Admissions, and she is amazing. She is so skilled and knowledgeable about FCA. And you will email her and say, hey, I'm interested in applying to FCA, or hey, I know a student who might want to apply to FCA. She'll send you the application information. You'll complete the application and you'll send it back. Then she will make an admissions decision. She'll say, absolutely, we have space in grade 6. Your student is welcome. We're so excited to have them. Or, she'll say, there is space opening up soon. Stay tuned, or whatever her decision is. And from there, you will pay your tuition. And after you pay the tuition, you'll apply for that Canadian study permit. And we're seeing a lot of success with study permits recently, which is awesome that the government of Canada is making more opportunities for students to come to Canada and study. Once the study permit is approved, you'll book your flights, and then you'll come join our FCA community. Now, it's important to mention here that FCA has a rolling admissions process. So we don't really have admissions deadlines. We welcome applications any time of the year, and applications are open during the year for students. If students come partway through a semester, no problem. If students come at the beginning of a semester, that's also great. We just want to welcome international students into our caring environment and to help them to grow in their English language learning and on their journey in education. Now I'm going to mention our next webinar that we're going to have. It's coming up in a few weeks, and I'm really excited about this one. You can take a photo of the screen if you'd like to. If you have your phone with you, you can also scan that QR code. The QR code will take you to a sign up for our next webinar, which is called Experience Atlantic Canada. I'm going to discuss about the different tourist attractions, exciting and unique elements of our region of Atlantic Canada. And then I'll also discuss about New Brunswick and Fredericton and kind of how it's a great spot to learn and grow for international students and international families. These webinars, I offer them throughout the year, every few weeks or every few months, depending. And they're just a great opportunity to learn about the excellent educational and student experiences at FCA. There's so much that we do here. I love to tell families about it. From our awesome teachers to the different testing and classes that we have at FCA to the supports that we have for international students to help them learn. There's a lot going on here that is worth sharing. I'm excited to share about the topic in October and hope that you can join and share with other people that you know as well. Now's the time of our webinar where we have question and answer period. But I want to mention really briefly, if you're looking to have questions and inquiries about FCA, email our Director of Admissions, Mrs. Sarah Jane. Her email is there on the screen, s.bishop@fcae.ca. We would love to hear from you, and we're excited to welcome you to our community. You can also learn more about our school on our website, fcae.ca. Thanks so much for joining me today, everybody.